The city lights twinkled against the darkening Chicago sky as a cold wind whipped between the towering buildings. Jack Miller shifted his weight from one foot to the other, trying to work some warmth back into his legs after standing outside the Davenport Hotel's grand ballroom for nearly an hour. The borrowed suit jacket hung loose around his shoulders, a reminder that he didn't belong here among the city's elite. His calloused fingers gripped the worn photograph of Lily, her bright smile beaming up at him despite the tubes and monitors surrounding her hospital bed. 6 months ago, that smile had been weaker, her face pale against the white pillows. But thanks to the Foundation's generosity, his little girl was alive and thriving. Another group of guests swept past him, the women's diamond earrings catching the light, their evening gowns rustling against the marble floor. Jack pressed himself closer to the wall, trying to become invisible. A woman in a red dress wrinkled her nose as she passed, whispering something to her companion that made them both laugh softly. "I shouldn't be here," Jack muttered to himself, running a hand through his graying hair. The security guard at the door had been watching him for the past 20 minutes, his hand resting near his radio. Jack knew he must look suspicious, a middle-aged man in an ill-fitting suit lurking by the entrance to a charity gala. But he needed to say thank you. The words burned in his throat, desperate to be spoken to someone, anyone who had been part of saving his daughter's life. The Foundation had covered hundreds of thousands in medical bills without asking for anything in return. A simple thank you seemed pathetically inadequate, but it was all he had to give. Through the ornate double doors, Jack caught glimpses of crystal chandeliers and floating trays of champagne. The sound of classical music drifted out whenever the doors opened, along with the gentle murmur of sophisticated conversation and tinkling laughter. His construction worker's hands felt rough and out of place, his borrowed shoes pinching his toes. "Sir?" The security guard finally approached, his expression stern but not unkind. "I'm going to have to ask you to move along." Jack's throat tightened. "Please, I need to thank them. The Foundation, they saved my daughter." He held up Lily's photo with trembling fingers. "She had heart surgery. They paid for everything. I just want 5 minutes to say thank you." The guard's face softened slightly, but he shook his head. "I'm sorry, sir. This is a private event. Without an invitation. Is there a problem here?" A sharp voice cut through their conversation. A cluster of guests had paused near the door, watching the exchange with mixed expressions of concern and disdain. "Look at him," one woman whispered, not quite quietly enough. "He's not even wearing a proper suit." Jack's cheeks burned. He should have known better than to come here. What had he been thinking? He was about to turn away when the ballroom doors opened once more, and a young woman stepped out. She moved with natural grace, her blue evening gown flowing like water around her. But it was her eyes that caught Jack's attention. Warm and intelligent, without a trace of the condescension he'd seen all evening. She noticed Jack's hands first, the way they trembled as they held Lily's photograph. Then her gaze moved to his face, taking in the anxiety and hope warring in his expression. Instead of dismissing him like the others, she paused, her head tilting slightly as if puzzled by a mystery she wanted to solve. The security guard straightened. "Miss Davenport, everything's fine. I was just explaining to this gentleman that he needs to leave." Elena Davenport. Jack recognized the name instantly. The daughter of Richard Davenport, whose name was on half the buildings in downtown Chicago. The young woman who, according to the newspaper article he'd read obsessively after Lily's surgery, served on the Foundation's board despite her young age. "May I see?" Elena asked softly, gesturing to the photograph in Jack's hands. Jack hesitated, then carefully held out the picture. Elena stepped closer, her perfume a subtle floral scent that reminded him of spring. She studied the photograph with genuine interest, her perfectly manicured fingers gentle as she held the worn edges. "This is your daughter?" she asked. Jack nodded, finding his voice. "Lily. She's 10. She had her surgery 6 months ago. The Foundation, your Foundation, they covered everything. I'm a single dad. I could never have afforded." His voice cracked, and he had to stop. Elena's eyes met his, and something in them made the knot in his chest loosen slightly. "What's your name?" she asked. "Jack Miller, ma'am. You came all this way just to say thank you?" There was no judgment in her voice, only curiosity. Yes, ma'am. I know I don't belong here. But I needed. She's alive because of what your foundation did. How do you thank someone for saving your child's life? The other guests were still watching, their whispers growing louder. The security guard shifted uncomfortably, clearly unsure whether to continue his attempt to remove Jack from the premises. Elena handed the photograph back to Jack, her movements deliberate and graceful. She studied his face for a long moment, as if making a decision that carried real weight. The classical music from the ballroom swelled, then faded, marking time as Jack held his breath, waiting to be dismissed. Elena Davenport stepped closer to Jack, her silk evening gown rustling softly against the marble floor. Her warm smile seemed to brighten the dimly lit entrance. "Good evening," she said, her voice gentle and genuine. "I couldn't help but notice you've been standing out here for quite a while. Is everything all right?" Jack's fingers tightened around the worn photograph he held. "I'm sorry. I don't mean to cause any trouble. He glanced down at Lily's smiling face in the picture, drawing courage from it. "My daughter had surgery last month, funded by the Davenport Foundation. I wanted to thank someone, anyone really, but I guess this wasn't the best idea." Elena's eyes softened as she looked at the photograph. "May I?" she asked, holding out her hand. Jack carefully passed it to her. "She has a beautiful smile," Elena said, studying the image. "What's her name?" "Lily," Jack replied, his voice growing stronger when speaking about his daughter. "She's 10, had a heart condition since birth, but thanks to the foundation," his voice cracked slightly. "She's doing great now." A security guard approached them, his expression stern. "Sir, if you don't have an invitation, I'll have to ask you to leave." Before Jack could step back, Elena's hand touched his arm. "He's with me," she declared, her voice carrying clear authority despite its warmth. Several nearby guests turned to stare. "In fact, he's my special guest this evening." The security guard's eyes widened in recognition. "Miss Davenport, I apologize. I didn't realize." "No need for apologies," Elena said, linking her arm through Jack's. "Shall we go inside?" she asked him, not waiting for an answer as she guided him through the ornate double doors. Jack felt like he'd stepped into another world. Crystal chandeliers cast a golden glow over the ballroom's polished floors. Tables draped in white linen held elaborate flower arrangements, while waiters in black ties weaved through the crowd with champagne flutes. "I shouldn't be here," Jack whispered, acutely aware of his ill-fitting jacket and scuffed shoes. "Nonsense," Elena replied firmly. "You have more right to be here than most. This foundation exists to help people like Lily." She led him toward a group of well-dressed guests. "Everyone, I'd like you to meet Jack Miller. His daughter Lily is one of our recent success stories." To Jack's surprise, the guests listened intently as Elena encouraged him to share Lily's story. He found himself describing the terrifying nights in the hospital, the worry that had consumed him, and the miracle of receiving the foundation's help. "I worked construction before the accident," Jack explained, his voice steady despite the emotion behind his words. "Had some savings, but medical bills." He shook his head. "Without the foundation, I don't know what would have happened to my little girl." An elderly woman in an elegant black dress dabbed at her eyes. "My dear boy, that's what we're here for, to help families like yours." As the evening progressed, Jack found himself drawn into conversations with doctors, business leaders, and philanthropists. Elena stayed nearby, smoothly introducing him to others and helping him navigate the unfamiliar social waters. She had a way of making everyone feel at ease, whether they were wearing designer labels or borrowed suits. The crowd began to thin as the night wore on. Jack found himself in a quiet corner with Elena, both holding untouched glasses of champagne. "I should go," he said, setting his glass down. "I can't thank you enough for your kindness tonight, Miss Davenport." "Elena, please," she corrected with a smile. Then, her expression turned serious. "There's something I should tell you, Jack." She paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. "I was part of the committee that reviewed Lily's case. When I read about her condition, about your situation, I knew we had to help. I may have been a bit persistent in pushing for approval." Jack stared at her, momentarily speechless. This elegant young woman, who had already shown him such unexpected kindness, had been Lily's anonymous champion all along. Gratitude warred with an uncomfortable feeling of indebtedness. I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything, Elena assured him quickly. Meeting you tonight? Hearing how well Lily is doing? That's all the thanks I need. Jack nodded, his throat tight with emotion. He was grateful, more grateful than he could express, but something inside him twisted at the thought of owing so much to strangers, even kind ones like Elena. He'd always prided himself on taking care of his daughter on his own, and now, I should really get home to Lily, he managed, his voice rough. Her babysitter. He didn't finish the sentence, but Elena seemed to understand. Of course, she said softly. It was wonderful meeting you, Jack. Please give Lily my best. Jack nodded again, unable to find the right words to express the complex mix of gratitude and discomfort he felt. As he turned to leave, Elena's voice stopped him one last time. Mr. Miller, I truly hope we'll meet again. The sincerity in her voice stayed with him as he made his way through the emptying ballroom, past the security guard who now nodded respectfully, and out into the cool Chicago night. Morning sunlight streamed through the small kitchen window of the Miller's apartment, casting warm patches on the worn linoleum floor. Jack stood at the stove, spatula in hand, flipping pancakes while trying to keep up with Lily's animated chatter about her upcoming science project. And Mrs. Thompson says we can bring in anything that shows how gravity works, Lily explained, swinging her legs under the kitchen table. Her long brown hair was pulled back in a slightly messy ponytail. Jack still hadn't mastered the art of hairstyling, even after all these years. That sounds interesting, sweetie, Jack said, sliding 2 slightly misshapen pancakes onto her plate. Any ideas what you want to do? Maybe something with marbles? Lily picked up her fork, then paused. Dad, you're doing it again. Doing what? That thing where you're here but not really here. Lily's observant eyes studied his face. Are you thinking about the nice lady from last night? Jack nearly dropped the spatula. Sometimes his daughter was too perceptive for her own good. His mind had indeed been drifting back to Elena Davenport. Her kind smile, the way she'd rescued him from embarrassment, how she'd made him feel like he belonged in that glittering ballroom, if only for a moment. Just thinking about work, kiddo, he fibbed, turning back to the stove. Eat up before they get cold. A knock at the door made them both jump. Jack wasn't expecting anyone, especially not this early. He wiped his hands on a dish towel and walked to the door, checking through the peephole. His heart skipped a beat. Elena Davenport stood in the hallway, looking somehow both out of place and perfectly at ease. She wore casual clothes, jeans and a simple sweater, but they probably cost more than his monthly rent. In her arms, she carried a large wicker basket. Jack opened the door, suddenly very aware of his old t-shirt and the pancake batter on his hands. Miss Davenport? Elena, please, she corrected with a warm smile. I hope I'm not interrupting breakfast. I brought some books I thought Lily might enjoy. She lifted the basket slightly. And please don't ask how I got your address. Let's just say the foundation keeps very thorough records. Dad? Lily called from the kitchen. Who is it? Jack hesitated. This wasn't his world. Beautiful, wealthy women didn't just show up at his door with gifts, but there was something in Elena's eyes that made him want to trust her. Would you like to come in? We have extra pancakes. Elena's face lit up. I'd love to. As she stepped into the apartment, Jack saw her taking in their modest surroundings, the second-hand furniture, the carefully patched walls, the craft supplies scattered across the coffee table. But there was no judgment in her expression. Only interest. Lily, Jack called. We have a visitor. Lily appeared in the kitchen doorway, syrup still on her chin. Her eyes widened. You're the pretty lady from Dad's picture. Jack felt his face grow hot. The photograph from the newspaper article about the foundation's charity work had been on their fridge for weeks. Elena, in an elegant gown, presenting an award at last year's gala. Elena laughed, the sound bright and genuine. And you must be the amazing artist I've heard about. I brought you something. She set the basket on the coffee table and began pulling out books, art instruction manuals, stories about famous painters, and even a brand new sketchbook. Lily rushed forward, all thoughts of pancakes forgotten. Dad, look, Can I show her my drawings? Before Jack could answer, Lily was already pulling Elena toward her small bedroom, chattering about her latest art projects. Jack watched them go, a strange mixture of emotions swirling in his chest. Gratitude, certainly, but also unease. What would someone like Elena Davenport want with them? Across town, in the exclusive Gold Coast neighborhood, Richard Davenport sat in his mahogany-paneled office, frowning at his computer screen. On it was a social media post showing his daughter at last night's gala, her arm linked with a man who clearly didn't belong there. "Harrison," he called to his assistant. "Get me everything you can find on a Jack Miller. His daughter had surgery funded by our foundation last month." Meanwhile, at a high-end cafe, two women who had attended the gala whispered over their lattes. "Did you see Elena Davenport with that man? So inappropriate. I heard he crashed the gala. She only helped him out of pity." "Well, Richard won't be pleased. He's been trying to set her up with the Reynolds boy for months." Back in the apartment, Elena sat cross-legged on Lily's bedroom floor, genuinely impressed by the girl's artwork. Jack leaned against the doorframe, watching as his daughter showed Elena page after page from her sketchbook. "You have real talent," Elena said, carefully examining a detailed drawing of a butterfly. "Have you ever taken art classes?" Lily's excitement dimmed slightly. "No, they're too expensive, but Dad got me lots of books from the library." Elena glanced up at Jack, something soft and understanding in her expression. "Well, I happen to know some wonderful art teachers. Maybe we could arrange something." "Miss Davenport," Jack cut in, his pride prickling. "That's very kind. But, Elena," she corrected again, more firmly this time. "And it wouldn't be charity, Jack. It would be a crime to let talent like this go unnurtured." Later that evening, after Elena had left with a promise to visit again soon, Jack stood at the living room window. The city lights sparkled in the distance, and somewhere out there, Elena Davenport was returning to her world of penthouses and charity galas. He touched the business card she'd left, with both her personal number and the contact information for an art teacher who owed her a favor. Lily's voice drifted from her room as she talked to her stuffed animals about her new friend Elena. Jack stared at the glittering skyline, wondering if he was foolish to let Elena into their lives, to let Lily get attached. Their worlds were so different. Was Elena's kindness genuine, or just another charitable act from a woman who had everything? The weekend arrived with gentle autumn sunshine warming the city streets. Elena's sleek car looked out of place among the weathered vehicles in the apartment complex's parking lot, but she didn't seem to notice as she made her way up the creaking stairs to the Millers' third-floor apartment. Jack opened the door before she could knock, having spotted her from the window. "Elena, hi, come in." He gestured to the modest living room, where textbooks and papers were spread across the coffee table. "Dad, Elena's here," Lily called out from her spot on the floor, surrounded by math homework. Her face lit up at the sight of their visitor. Elena set down her bag and settled cross-legged on the carpet next to Lily. "What are we working on today?" she asked, picking up one of the worksheets. "Fractions," Lily groaned, flopping dramatically onto her back. "They're impossible." "Oh, I wouldn't say that," Elena laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "Here, let me show you a trick I learned when I was your age." She pulled a sheet of paper closer and began drawing circles, dividing them into sections. Jack moved to the kitchen, busying himself with making coffee, but he couldn't help watching them through the pass-through window. Elena's patient explanations and Lily's gradual understanding reminded him of Sarah, his late wife, who'd had the same gift for making difficult things seem simple. "See? You've got it." Elena's voice carried from the living room, followed by Lily's excited, "Oh, now I get it." Jack brought them glasses of lemonade, setting them on coasters on the coffee table. "Making progress? Elena makes it so much easier, Dad." Lily beamed. "Can she help me with homework every weekend?" Now, Jack started, but Elena interrupted with a smile. "I'd love to, actually. If that's okay with your dad?" She looked up at Jack, her eyes sincere. Before Jack could respond, Lily had already jumped up and rushed to the corner of the room. "Elena, do you play piano?" Dad says Mom used to play all the time. The old upright piano stood against the wall, its wood dulled with age but still dignified. Jack hadn't been able to part with it after Sarah passed. It felt like letting go of one more piece of her. Elena rose gracefully and walked to the instrument. I do play. Actually. May I? Jack nodded, his throat suddenly tight. Elena lifted the lid and ran her fingers lightly over the keys. A few experimental notes rang out, slightly out of tune but still clear. It needs some tuning, Jack apologized. But Elena was already playing a simple melody, something sweet and familiar. I love this old piano, she said between notes. Modern ones are perfect, but they don't have the same character. Her fingers danced across the keys, bringing warmth to the room. I learned on one just like this, actually, before Father insisted on getting a grand piano for the house. Lily settled on the bench beside Elena, watching her hands move. Did you have to practice a lot? Hours every day, Elena smiled, but there was a hint of something else in her voice. Father had very specific ideas about what his daughter should accomplish. She shifted into a livelier tune, and Lily giggled as she recognized it. That's from that movie with the toys. Jack leaned against the wall, watching them. Elena's shoulders relaxed as she played, as if she could shed the weight of expectations note by note. She looked different here. More real somehow, away from the glittering ballrooms and society events. I used to drive my teachers crazy, Elena confided, still playing. They wanted classical pieces, but I preferred playing by ear, learning whatever made me happy. She glanced at Jack. What about you? What made you choose construction? I've always liked building things, Jack said, moving closer to the piano. There's something satisfying about creating something solid, something that lasts. Before Lily got sick, I was working on high-rises downtown. He paused, remembering. You could see the whole city from up there. Do you miss it? Elena asked softly, her playing quieting to a gentle background melody. Sometimes, Jack admitted, but the hours are long, and Lily needs me here more. He didn't mention the medical bills that had forced him to take a lower-paying but more flexible job. Elena nodded, understanding in her eyes. Father wanted me to go into business, take over the company someday, when I chose medicine instead. She trailed off, her fingers stilling on the keys. Let's just say it wasn't what he had planned. But you're helping people, Lily said firmly. Like you helped me. Elena's smile returned, bright and genuine. Exactly. Sometimes you have to follow your heart, even when it leads you away from the path others chose for you. The afternoon light began to fade, casting long shadows through the windows. Lily had returned to her homework, and Elena moved to help her with the remaining problems. Jack watched them work together, struck by how natural it felt. Elena in their modest apartment, laughing with his daughter, making their space feel more like home than it had in years. Too soon, Elena glanced at her watch and began gathering her things. I should head out. Big day at the hospital tomorrow. Thank you for coming, Lily said, hugging her tightly. Try and stop me, Elena winked, returning the hug. Jack walked her to her car, the evening air cool against their faces. Streetlights were just beginning to flicker on, creating pools of light in the growing dusk. They reached her car, and Elena turned to face him. For a moment, Jack felt words building in his chest, about how much her visits meant to Lily, about how she brought light into their lives, about feelings he wasn't sure he had a right to have. But instead, he simply said, Good night, Elena. Drive safe. Elena's smile was soft and hopeful as she got into her car. As she drove away, the taillights disappearing into the evening traffic, Jack stood watching long after she was gone, the echo of piano music still hanging in the air. Saturday morning sunlight streamed through the apartment windows, casting warm patches on the faded carpet. Jack stood at the kitchen counter, stirring his coffee and watching Lily work on her math homework at the small dining table. The quiet scratching of her pencil filled the room until 3 soft knocks echoed from the front door. Lily's head shot up. I'll get it! Hold on, sweetheart, Jack said, moving to answer it himself. When he opened the door, Elena stood there with a bright smile and a leather-bound book tucked under her arm. Good morning, she said cheerfully. I hope I'm not interrupting anything? Elena! Lily abandoned her homework and rushed over. Jack noticed how Elena's face lit up at the sight of his daughter. She knelt down to Lily's level, a habit he'd observed before, one that spoke of genuine care rather than condescension. "I brought something for you," Elena said, presenting the book. "It's a beginner's piano book. I thought, if your dad agrees, I could teach you how to play." Lily's eyes widened as she carefully took the book, running her fingers over the golden musical notes embossed on its cover. She turned to Jack with pleading eyes. "Can I, Dad, please?" Jack hesitated. The piano in the corner had belonged to Sarah, his late wife. It had sat mostly untouched since her passing, collecting dust and memories in equal measure. But seeing the hope in Lily's eyes and the gentle encouragement in Elena's expression made something shift inside him. "I suppose we could give it a try," he said softly. Lily hugged the book to her chest and practically bounced over to the piano. Elena followed, pulling out the bench and dusting it off with her sleeve. Jack watched as she helped Lily settle onto the bench, showing her how to position her hands over the keys. "First," Elena explained, "we need to learn where Middle Sea Island. It's like home base in baseball, the note we always come back to." As the morning progressed, simple scales and basic notes filled the apartment. Lily's face scrunched in concentration as she practiced, while Elena's patient guidance never wavered. Jack found himself moving closer, leaning against the wall to watch them. Over the next few weeks, Elena came by 3 afternoons a week for Lily's lessons. The old piano came alive again, its voice growing stronger with each visit. Jack often stood in the kitchen, pretending to wash dishes or prepare dinner, but really just listening to the blend of music, laughter, and gentle instruction that drifted through the apartment. "That's it," Elena would say. "Now try it again. But this time remember to count. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Lily's halting attempts at Twinkle Twinkle Little Star gradually became smoother. When she finally played it through without mistakes, her triumphant grin lit up the room. Jack caught Elena's eye across the space, sharing a moment of pride that made his heart skip. Sometimes, after Lily's lessons, Elena would play herself. Her fingers danced across the keys, bringing forth melodies that seemed too big for their small apartment. During these moments, Jack would see Lily close her eyes, swaying slightly to the music, and he'd remember Sarah doing the same thing years ago. But it didn't hurt as much as he'd expected. Instead, the memory felt like a warm embrace, as if Sarah would have approved of this new music filling their home. One Wednesday evening, after a particularly good lesson where Lily had mastered a new piece, Elena lingered by the door as Lily went to get ready for bed. "Thank you," Jack said, his voice rough with emotion. "For all of this. I haven't heard her laugh like that in a long time." Elena's eyes softened. "She's a wonderful student, and it's been a joy to teach her." She reached for her coat, and as Jack helped her with it, their hands brushed. A small touch, barely there, but it sent a current through both of them. For a moment, they stood frozen, the ghost of that touch hanging in the air between them. Then Elena smiled, a slight flush coloring her cheeks, and stepped into the hallway. "Same time Friday?" she asked, her voice slightly unsteady. Jack nodded, not trusting himself to speak. He watched her walk down the hallway until she disappeared around the corner, then closed the door and leaned against it, his heart racing. That night, long after Lily had gone to bed, Jack lay awake in his room. He could still feel the warmth where Elena's hand had brushed his, could still see the way she'd looked at him in that moment. It both thrilled and terrified him, this feeling he thought he'd never experience again. Across town, in her luxurious high-rise apartment, Elena sat at her window, looking out at the city lights. Her fingers absently traced the keys of her own piano, but her mind was back in that small apartment, replaying that brief touch again and again. She thought about Jack's quiet strength, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, how carefully he listened when she played. Sleep eluded her as she sat there, her heart full of possibilities she hadn't dared to imagine before. Neither knew that the other was awake, both lost in thoughts of that simple, accidental touch that had somehow changed everything. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across Jack's kitchen as he stared at the colorful invitation in his hands. Elena had dropped it off personally, her eyes sparkling with excitement as she explained about the community charity event she was organizing at Harrison Park this weekend. "Please come," she'd said, her smile warm and hopeful. "It's going to be wonderful." Jack shifted uncomfortably. "I don't know, Elena. These kinds of events, they're not really our scene. Dad! Lily bounced on her toes beside him, her eyes wide with anticipation. Can we go? Pretty please? It's just a casual community gathering, Elena assured him, touching his arm gently. Nothing fancy. There'll be food trucks, local musicians, and all proceeds go to the children's hospital. Lily tugged at his sleeve. Please, Dad. Elena said there'd be ice cream. Jack looked down at his daughter's pleading face, then back at Elena. Something in her expression made his heart skip a beat, a mixture of kindness and something else he couldn't quite name. All right, he conceded, unable to resist their combined enthusiasm. We'll come. Saturday evening arrived with perfect weather. String lights crisscrossed overhead between trees in the park, creating a magical canopy of soft light. Food trucks lined the perimeter, their enticing aromas mixing with the sound of laughter and music. Jack felt surprisingly at ease as they walked through the crowd. Elena had been right. The atmosphere was relaxed and welcoming. Neighbors chatted with society members as if social barriers didn't exist. Children played together on the grass while their parents mingled. Jack, Lily. Elena waved from near a small stage area. She wore a simple sundress that made her look more like the girl next door than a billionaire's daughter. I'm so glad you came. This is amazing, Jack said, looking around at the transformed park. Elena beamed. Actually, I have a surprise. She knelt down to Lily's level. Remember that piece we've been practicing? Lily nodded eagerly. Well, I thought maybe you'd like to play it for everyone. We have a beautiful piano right here on stage. Lily's eyes widened. Really? Can I, Dad? Jack hesitated, protective instincts kicking in. But the joy on his daughter's face was impossible to resist. If you want to, sweetheart. Elena led Lily to the stage while Jack found a spot near the front. His daughter looked tiny sitting at the grand piano, but her posture was confident just as Elena had taught her. The crowd grew quiet as her small fingers touched the keys. The first notes of Moon River floated through the evening air. Jack's chest tightened with emotion. He remembered how his late wife used to sing this song while doing dishes, how baby Lily would giggle at the sound. Now here was his daughter, playing it beautifully under the stars. Tears pricked at his eyes as he watched. Lily's face glowed with concentration and joy. The audience swayed gently to the melody, many smiling with appreciation. When the final notes faded away, the applause was genuine and warm. That was beautiful, sweetheart, Jack whispered as Lily ran into his arms. Did you like it, Dad? Elena helped me practice extra this week to make it perfect. I loved it. He looked up to find Elena watching them, her own eyes suspiciously bright. As the evening continued, a local band took the stage. Elena appeared at Jack's side, holding out her hand. The old Jack would have refused. But something had changed in these past weeks. He took her hand, letting her lead him to where other couples swayed under the string lights. They moved together slowly, careful to maintain a respectable distance, but Jack could feel the electricity in every point where they touched. Elena's hand was warm in his, her presence both comforting and thrilling. Thank you, he said softly. For what? For all of this. For being kind to Lily. He struggled to find the right words. For seeing us. Elena's eyes met his, full of understanding. You don't have to thank me, Jack. Being with you and Lily, it's the most real thing in my life. The moment stretched between them, full of unspoken possibilities. Lily danced nearby with some other children, her laughter carrying across the grass. Everything felt perfect, like a dream Jack never wanted to wake from. Then a commanding voice cut through the music. Elena. Richard Davenport stood at the edge of the dance floor, his expensive suit and stern expression jarringly out of place among the casual gathering. Elena's hand tightened briefly in Jack's before she pulled away. Father, I didn't expect you here. Clearly. Richard's tone was ice. A word. Now. Elena shot Jack an apologetic look before following her father to a secluded spot near a large oak tree. Jack couldn't help but drift closer, trying to keep an eye on Lily while staying within earshot. This has gone far enough. Richard's sharp words carried clearly. I've been patient, Elena, but you're making a spectacle of yourself. Dancing with a construction worker? Having his child perform at your event? Dad, please. No. This ends now. I've looked into his situation. That girl of his needs ongoing treatment, expensive medication, all of which is currently funded through our foundation." Richard's voice lowered dangerously. "How do you think he'd manage without that support?" Jack's blood ran cold. "You wouldn't?" Elena gasped. "I would. It's time you remembered who you are and where you belong. End this, whatever it is. Or I'll be forced to reevaluate the Foundation's commitment to certain cases." Jack stepped back, his heart shattering in his chest. The string lights above suddenly seemed to mock him, their warm glow turning harsh and artificial. How could he have been so foolish, to think he could step into this world, to risk Lily's health for his own happiness? The music played on, but Jack no longer heard it. All he could hear was the echo of Richard Davenport's threat, and the sound of his own dreams crashing down around him. Morning sunlight filtered through the worn curtains of Jack's small kitchen, casting a gentle glow on the breakfast table where he sat with Lily. His coffee had gone cold, untouched, as he listened to his daughter's excited chatter about the previous night's concert. "Did you see everyone clapping, Dad? Even Mrs. Thompson from next door was there." Lily beamed, her spoon hovering over her cereal bowl. And Elena said, "I played the piece perfectly." Her face glowed with pride, but Jack's answering smile felt stiff on his face. Richard Davenport's words from the previous night echoed in his mind. "If you continue this relationship, your daughter's medical support ends." The threat hung heavy in the air, though Lily remained blissfully unaware. Lost in her happy memories. "Can Elena come over today for another lesson?" Lily asked, hope shining in her eyes. Jack's heart clenched. "Sweetheart, I think Elena might be busy for a while. She has important work to do at the hospital, but she promised to teach me the new song." Lily's lower lip trembled slightly. Before Jack could respond, a familiar knock sounded at the door. His stomach dropped. He knew that knock. Lily jumped up, but Jack gently caught her arm. "Finish your breakfast, honey. I'll get it." Elena stood in the hallway, her smile bright but uncertain. She wore casual clothes today, jeans and a simple sweater, looking more like a neighbor than a billionaire's daughter. "Good morning," she said softly. "I brought Lily's next music book." Jack stepped into the hallway, quietly closing the door behind him. "Elena, we need to talk." She must have sensed something in his tone because her smile faded. "Jack? What's wrong?" He took a deep breath, steeling himself. "This needs to stop. The visits, the lessons, all of it." "What?" Elena's voice cracked. "Why? If this is about last night." "I heard what your father said." Jack cut in, keeping his voice low. "About Lily's medical support." Elena's face flushed with anger. "My father doesn't control me, Jack. I don't care what he threatens." "But I do care," Jack interrupted firmly. "I have to care. Lily's health comes first, always. We can figure this out together," Elena pleaded, reaching for his hand. "I have savings. I'm almost finished with my residency." Jack stepped back, avoiding her touch. "Elena, please. You're young. You have your whole life ahead of you. You don't need to sacrifice everything for us. That's not your decision to make." Elena's eyes filled with tears. "What about what I want? Sometimes what we want doesn't matter," Jack said, his voice rough. "I'm sorry, but this is how it has to be." "Jack, please. Goodbye, Elena." He turned away, unable to bear the sight of her tears, and went back inside. Through the door, he heard a muffled sob, then the sound of retreating footsteps. Lily looked up from her cereal, confusion written across her face. "Was that Elena? Why didn't she come in?" Jack swallowed hard. "She just dropped something off, sweetie." She couldn't stay. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Jack went through the motions of their weekend routine. Laundry, grocery shopping, helping Lily with homework. But his heart wasn't in it. Every time Lily mentioned Elena, which was often, it felt like a knife twisting in his chest. That night, after tucking Lily into bed, Jack lay in his own room, staring at the shadowy ceiling. The apartment felt emptier somehow, as if Elena's absence had created a vacuum. From across the hall, he could hear Lily's soft, steady breathing, the sound that had anchored him through countless difficult nights since losing his wife. He thought about Elena's tears, about the way she'd looked at him in the hallway. The pain in her eyes haunted him. But then he remembered the stack of medical bills in his desk drawer. The upcoming follow-up appointments Lily needed. The medications she still required. One wrong move, one missed treatment, and everything could fall apart. Jack rolled onto his side, pressing his face into the pillow. The sacrifice felt impossible to bear, yet he knew he would bear it. He would bear anything for Lily, even if it meant breaking not only Elena's heart, but his own as well. In the quiet darkness, Jack Miller lay awake, listening to his daughter breathe, and felt the weight of his choice pressing down on his chest like a stone. The right decision, he reminded himself, rarely felt like the easy one. But knowing that didn't make the ache in his heart any easier to bear. The days crawled by like a slow-moving shadow. Jack's apartment felt emptier now, despite nothing physical having changed. The old piano in the corner stood silent, its keys gathering dust where Elena's and Lily's fingers had once brought music to life. Jack picked up every extra shift he could at the construction site, starting before dawn and working until his muscles ached. The physical labor helped distract him from the hollow feeling in his chest. His calloused hands gripped steel beams and power tools, while his mind kept drifting back to the warmth of Elena's smile, the way her eyes lit up when she taught Lily piano. "Miller, watch it!" his co-worker shouted one afternoon, snapping Jack back to reality just before he dropped a heavy beam. He nodded gratefully, wiping sweat from his forehead. He had to stay focused. This was his world now, just as it had always been. Meanwhile, across town in the gleaming halls of Chicago's elite social circles, Elena faced her own kind of isolation. At charity board meetings, conversations would stop when she entered the room, replaced by pointed whispers behind manicured hands. Old family friends who had known her since childhood now regarded her with cool politeness. "Really, Elena?" Her father's words echoed in her head during another tense dinner. "You're only hurting yourself with this unfortunate fixation." Richard Davenport didn't even look up from his newspaper as he spoke, as if his daughter's pain wasn't worth his full attention. Elena pushed her food around her plate, barely eating. She'd thrown herself into her hospital rotations, working extra hours in the pediatric ward. At least there, caring for sick children, she felt useful. Sometimes, when treating a young patient, she'd catch herself wondering how Lily was doing, if her recovery was still on track. Back at the Miller apartment, Lily sat at the kitchen table, homework spread before her but pencil idle in her hand. She watched her father washing dishes with mechanical movements, his shoulders heavy with invisible weight. "Dad?" she ventured quietly. "Yeah, sweetheart?" Jack turned, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "How come Elena doesn't visit anymore? Did I do something wrong with my piano playing?" The plate in Jack's hands nearly slipped. He set it down carefully, his heart breaking at the worry in his daughter's voice. "No, honey. You didn't do anything wrong. Your playing was beautiful. Then why?" Lily persisted, twirling her pencil nervously. "She made you smile, Dad. Real smiles, not the pretend ones you're doing now." Jack moved to the table, pulling out a chair next to his daughter. How could he explain that sometimes adults had to make hard choices? That sometimes keeping someone safe meant letting go of something precious? "Elena's very busy with her doctor training," he said finally, hating the half-truth even as it left his lips. "She has important work to do, helping other kids like you get better. But she could still visit sometimes, couldn't she?" Lily's lower lip trembled slightly. "I miss her." Jack pulled his daughter into a tight hug, closing his eyes against the sting of tears. "I know, sweetheart. I miss her too." At the hospital, Elena buried herself in patient charts and medical journals, staying late into the evening. Her fellow residents noticed the change in her. The usually bright and engaging doctor now moved through her shifts with quiet determination, as if running from something. "Dr. Davenport?" A nurse touched her arm gently one evening. "Your father's been calling the front desk." Elena nodded tersely, already knowing what the call would be about. Another society function she was expected to attend, another eligible bachelor she was supposed to meet. She'd stopped answering her father's calls directly. The rain started that evening as Jack drove home from his second shift. The windshield wipers beat a steady rhythm as city lights blurred through the water. He thought about Elena working at the hospital, probably still in her white coat, helping people. That's where she belonged. In that world of healing and hope, not tied down to a struggling single dad with too much pride and too little to offer. His phone lit up on the passenger seat. Elena's name glowed on the screen, and Jack's hand twitched toward it instinctively. For a moment, he could almost hear her voice. Imagine what she might say. Would she tell him they could find another way? That his pride wasn't worth their happiness? But then he remembered Richard Davenport's cold threat, thought of Lily's ongoing medical needs, and the crushing reality settled back in. Jack parked outside their apartment building, still staring at the phone as it continued to ring. A tear slid down his cheek, joining the raindrops on his work jacket. With trembling fingers, he picked up the phone, thumb hovering over the answer button. The screen blurred through his tears as Elena's name continued to pulse with incoming call light. Finally, letting out a shaky breath, he set the phone face down on the seat beside him and closed his eyes, listening to the rain drum against the roof of his truck. Jack held Lily's small hand as they walked through the automatic doors of Chicago Memorial Hospital. The familiar antiseptic smell hit him, bringing back memories of countless visits over the past years. Lily skipped beside him, her pink backpack bouncing against her shoulders, seemingly unbothered by another checkup. "Remember what we talked about, sweetheart?" Jack asked, his voice gentle. "Just a quick visit with Dr. Thompson today." "I know, Daddy," Lily said, swinging their joined hands. "I even brought my drawing to show him." The elevator ride to the pediatric floor was quiet except for Lily humming a tune, one of the songs Elena had taught her. Jack's chest tightened at the sound. He tried to focus on reviewing Lily's medication schedule in his mind instead. The pediatric ward was decorated with cheerful murals of animals and hot air balloons. They checked in at the nurses' station, where a friendly receptionist directed them to exam room 3. Jack helped Lily onto the examination table, the paper crinkling beneath her. "The doctor will be right in," the nurse said with a smile before closing the door. Jack settled into the chair beside the table, pulling out his phone to check work messages. A few minutes passed, filled with Lily's chatter about her latest art project. The door opened, and Jack looked up, expecting to see Dr. Thompson's familiar gray hair. Instead, his heart stopped. There stood Elena in a white coat, her long hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, a stethoscope around her neck. She looked different, more professional, somehow more grown up. But her eyes were the same warm brown he remembered. "Elena!" Lily squealed, her face lighting up. Elena's professional composure cracked for just a moment as she smiled at Lily. "Hi there, sweet girl." She glanced at Jack, who had risen from his chair. "Mr. Miller, I'm covering for Dr. Thompson today." "I hope that's okay." Jack could only manage a nod, his throat tight. He watched as Elena approached Lily, her movements precise and confident. "So, how have you been feeling?" Elena asked, pulling out her stethoscope. "Good, I've been practicing piano every day, even though." Lily's voice trailed off as she glanced between the adults. Elena maintained her professional demeanor as she performed the examination, but Jack could see the slight tremor in her hands as she checked Lily's heartbeat. She wrote notes in the chart, asked all the right questions, and reviewed Lily's medications with practiced efficiency. "Your heart sounds perfect," Elena told Lily with a warm smile. "Would you mind if I talked to your dad for a minute? Sarah at the nurse's station has some stickers you might like." Lily hopped down from the table. "Can I go, Daddy?" Jack nodded, and they watched as Lily skipped out of the room. The door clicked shut behind her, leaving them in a heavy silence. "I didn't know you were working here now," Jack finally said, his voice rough. Elena set down her clipboard. "I started my residency 2 weeks ago. She took a deep breath. "I turned down the position at my father's private hospital. This is where I want to be. Thanks for watching." "Elena, you don't have to." "Yes, I do," she interrupted, taking a step closer. "I need you to listen to me, Jack. I've spent my whole life trying to be what everyone else wanted me to be. The perfect daughter, the society princess, following my father's carefully planned path." Her voice grew stronger. "But that's not who I am. This," she gestured to her white coat. "This is who I am. A doctor who wants to help children like Lily, a woman who knows her own mind." Jack gripped the back of the chair, his knuckles white. "Your father? My father doesn't control me anymore." Elena said firmly. I've made my own arrangements for my career. I'm using my mother's inheritance, money that's mine, not his, to start a new pediatric care program here. She moved closer. Close enough that Jack could smell the light floral scent of her perfume. And I'm not letting him or anyone else tell me who I can love. The word love hung in the air between them. Jack's heart hammered in his chest. I miss you, Elena continued, her voice softer now. I miss Lily. I miss our evenings together. The music. These past weeks have been empty without you both. She reached out, touching his arm lightly. I know you pushed me away to protect Lily, but you don't have to protect her from me. I'm not going anywhere. Jack looked down at her hand on his arm, then back to her face. He saw the determination there, the strength, but also the vulnerability. I can't ask you to give up your world for us, he whispered. You're not asking. I'm choosing. My world is wherever I can do the most good, wherever I can be true to myself. Elena's eyes shimmered with tears, and somehow that led me right to you and Lily. Through the window in the door, they could see Lily at the nurse's station, proudly showing off her new stickers. Her smile was bright, carefree, the smile of a child who felt safe and loved. Jack felt something crack inside him, a wall he'd built to protect his heart. I miss you too, he admitted, his voice barely audible. Every day. Elena stepped closer, and this time, Jack didn't back away. Then stop fighting this, she whispered. Stop fighting us. In the sterile hospital corridor, with the sounds of monitors beeping and phones ringing in the background, Jack finally surrendered to what his heart had known all along. He pulled Elena into his arms, holding her close, breathing in the reality of her presence. She melted against him, her arms wrapping around his waist, her head fitting perfectly under his chin. Through the door's window, Lily watched them with a knowing smile, her small hands pressed against the glass, her new stickers forgotten. The golden light from the Davenport Hotel's grand entrance spilled onto the sidewalk, just as it had months ago. But this time, Jack Miller wasn't alone in his borrowed suit. Elena stood beside him in an elegant blue evening gown, her hand wrapped firmly around his. On his other side, Lily bounced excitedly in her new party dress, her dark curls bouncing with each movement. It feels strange being back here, Jack admitted, his voice quiet. He adjusted his tie, a proper one this time, though he still felt out of place. The memory of that first night, clutching Lily's photo while trying to gather the courage to enter, felt both distant and fresh. Elena squeezed his hand. You belong here just as much as anyone else, she said, her eyes warm with understanding. More, actually. Your love for Lily is worth more than all the designer suits and diamond necklaces inside combined. Lily tugged at Jack's sleeve. Daddy, why are we standing out here? I want to show everyone my new piano piece. A few arriving guests glanced their way, whispering behind raised hands. Jack recognized some faces from society pages, the same people who had dismissed him months ago. His jaw tightened. Maybe this isn't such a good idea, he murmured. Your father is going to have to accept that love doesn't check bank accounts first. Elena interrupted firmly. She turned to face Jack, her expression fierce and tender at once. We've fought too hard to let fear stop us now. Lily looked between them, her young face serious. Miss Peterson says courage isn't about not being scared. It's about doing something even when you are scared. Jack laughed softly, touched by his daughter's wisdom. When did you get so smart, sweetheart? Elena taught me that too, Lily said with a proud grin. Elena's eyes sparkled with unshed tears. Well then, she said, straightening her shoulders. Shall we show them what real courage looks like? Jack took a deep breath and nodded. Together they walked through the massive doors that had once seemed so insurmountable. The ballroom beyond glittered with crystal chandeliers and floating candles, just as magnificent as Jack remembered. But this time, he wasn't searching for a way to belong. He already did. The conversation around them dimmed as heads turned. Jack felt the weight of hundreds of stares, heard the ripple of whispers, but Elena's hand remained steady in his, and Lily's excitement was contagious. Before anyone could react, Lily broke away from them and ran toward the small stage where a string quartet was setting up. Excuse me, she called out, her voice clear and confident. The musicians paused, smiling at her enthusiasm. Jack started forward, but Elena held him back. "Let her speak," she whispered. Lily climbed the 3 steps to the stage, her party shoes clicking against the polished wood. She turned to face the crowd, which had fallen silent in surprise. "Hi, everyone," she began, waving. "I'm Lily Miller. Last time there was a party here, my daddy was standing outside because he wanted to thank you for saving my life." Her voice carried across the hushed room. "The doctors fixed my heart, but Elena showed us that love can fix everything else too." A few people dabbed at their eyes. Even the serving staff had stopped to listen. "So I wanted to say thank you again, not just for the surgery, but for helping me get a new family." Lily beamed at Jack and Elena. "And maybe sometimes the best things happen when we let people in, even if they're standing outside." Spontaneous applause broke out, spreading across the ballroom like a wave. Jack felt Elena trembling beside him and pulled her close. When he looked down, he saw tears streaming down her cheeks, but she was smiling. At the far end of the room, Richard Davenport stood with his usual stern expression. But as Lily's words faded, something shifted in his face. He looked at his daughter, really looked at her, perhaps seeing for the first time how she glowed with happiness. Then, slowly, he nodded. Just once. But it was enough. Elena's grip on Jack's hand tightened. They both understood what that small gesture meant. Acceptance, however reluctant, permission to be happy, to be family. The string quartet began to play a slow waltz. Other couples moved onto the dance floor, but Jack and Elena remained still, savoring the moment. Lily had run off to the dessert table, already making friends with other children. "May I have this dance?" Elena asked softly, turning to face Jack. Her eyes held the same warmth they had that first night, when she'd reached out to a stranger with kindness. Jack pulled her close as they stepped onto the dance floor. The chandeliers sparkled above them, casting rainbow lights across Elena's hair. As they swayed to the music, Jack thought about the man he'd been, standing alone outside these doors with nothing but hope and a photograph. "What are you thinking about?" Elena asked, reading his expression. "About how far we've come," he replied. "About how love can change everything." She rested her head on his shoulder, fitting perfectly against him. "It already has." The music swelled around them, and Jack closed his eyes, holding Elena close. He wasn't the outsider anymore. He was exactly where he belonged, surrounded by the love of his growing family, his heart as full as the starlit ballroom. And when the lights dim and the music fades, will this new family shine bright enough to withstand the storm still to come? Click to watch what happens next. Subscribe so you never miss a story that will touch your soul. And tell us in the comments, do you believe Richard will let them be? Or is another battle just beginning? If you believe in stories that remind us of faith, compassion, and second chances, please consider subscribing and following along. Every time you do, you help keep these kinds of stories alive and reaching the people who need them most. Until next time, know this: you are seen, you are valued, and you are loved. Hold on to hope, and never be afraid to take someone's hand when it reaches out in kindness.